Mando Fandos, welcome back to the Mando Fan Show. This is episode 2 that we're going to be calling Rest I Need, and we'll get into why in just a second. But we're not resting because we've been recording pretty much every day for the last month, feels like. I'm John. How are you guys? Thanks so much for joining us today. It is episode 2 of the Mando Fan Show. With me, as always, is James and Lacey, and we have a special guest with us as well, as you see if you're watching on YouTube right now. From the Anakin and His Angel blog, we have Jen Marie. Jen Marie, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm so happy to discuss this episode with you guys.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're already a quarter way through the season. James and Lacey, can you guys believe that these episodes are about as long as an episode of like Full House?
It was like the first thing I noticed when I started the episode. I was like, wait, hold up, that says 32 minutes, like that's short. And then it like starts a recap and I was like, okay, so it's probably more like 30 minutes. And then considering credits and other things, yeah, it brings it down to like 26, 25. I don't know. I think our expectations have changed on how long these episodes or these chapters are going to be. Lacey, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I did the thing that I did with the first episode where I was like live tweeting to myself about my thoughts and feelings and what I was noticing. And at the end, it's just a sentence. These are really short.
Yeah. It's
because I was like, that's it? Oh.
I do this thing. If there's a show I like, I'm more oft to pause to see how much is left as opposed to a show I don't like.
Right.
And I did that for this show twice. And once I was like, oh, I got 15 minutes left. So we still got a chunk of story to tell here. And then I did it one more time when I thought it was ending and it said 5 more minutes. I'm like, oh, cool. So we're going to do something else leading us into the next episode. And then bang, credits. I was like, what are you doing for the next 4 minutes? Like, come on.
They're like, psych, here's 4 minutes of credits and concept art. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I know. I was under the impression that they were going to be hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
That's what I've been expecting this whole time. Yeah. So it's kind of crazy.
All right. Well, we'll see if that affects our rating. So, guys, let's rate this thing right now. And what we do here, if you're new to the Mando Fan Show, you're not that late because we only have one episode before this. If you haven't watched it, go back and check it out. If you're a UK listener or something and you're catching up, that's cool too. These are sort of evergreen, I guess. But what we do here is we rate the episodes from 0 to 10. Halves are included using Pedro Pascal faces. And you'll see if you're watching on YouTube on the screen in just a second what that means. Basically just a little bit of fun because we don't know if we're actually going to see his face during this season. So we figured we'll show you his face dozens of times right here. So I'll start with my rating. And I gave this episode a 7.5. Jen Marie, what'd you give this episode?
I gave it an 8.
8 Pedro faces for Jen Marie. James?
I did a 7.
An even 7. So you and I both went down a half.
Yes.
Lacey, how about you?
First of all, I think it would be a shame if they didn't show his face because he's super attractive. But I gave it an 8.
An 8. And you gave it a 9? Episode 1 was a 9, right? So you
went down a full letter grade.
Okay, now
Your parents would be nervous if you were handing in a report.
Now let me take our 4 scores and just do the mental math here, like a little Good Will Hunting situation. And I believe that's a 7.6 for the 4 of us. So 7.6 Pedro faces. I don't know how you do 0.6 Pedro faces, but Lacey will figure it out. It's probably right there.
A little past the nose. A little past the nose.
A little past the nose. Yeah, like Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight, just like that.
Yeah.
7.6 for us. And then we asked our patrons, Resistance Broadcast patrons over at patreon.com/Resistance Broadcast to also rate it. And Lacey put their averages together. And Lacey, what did our patrons give this episode?
It's funny, John. I put them in the notes so that you could read it. So I don't have that number in front of me.
Oh, well then. I thought you had the notes in front of you. Sorry. Our patrons gave this episode a lot higher than us. 8.75 for episode 2.
Wow.
Right. I'm a little surprised about that, to be honest.
A lot of 10s. There were like 2 or 3 10s. Like a perfect score.
That's so irresponsible. I'm sorry. That means it's the best episode. You can't beat it. That's crazy to me.
Asuga.
But, I understand it. There's a lot of hype and stuff like that, and I get that. But now, remember, guys, if you want to be featured on the show, make sure you tweet about The Mandalorian using hashtag MandoFando or reply to our requests for them, and we'll get you on the show, kind of like this guy did. And we went to Brandon Skywalker at Brandon Skywalk3, and Brandon said 8.5 Pedro Pascal faces. Do you think... I'll never get tired of that.
No.
Do you think we can confirm the sand planet as Tatooine now that we've seen Jawas? How did Tiny get there? Tiny, which we call here, this is not Yoda. So that's why we came up with that acronym. In my opinion, there's no way Mando is turning him in for reward after Tiny showed his Force power. So many questions. So first, Brandon, I just did a little looking around, and apparently this planet that he was on is called Arvala 7. Which sounds a little Star Trek-y because you got a little number in the planet there and that sort of thing, but whatever. So it's not Tatooine, but I think we may see Tatooine at some point in this series. But if you are also, you don't have to tweet necessarily hashtag MandoFando. If you're a patron of ours, you can also lightspeed to the show here, and someone did that, and his name was Paul Howe, and Paul said 8 Pedros. I enjoyed it much better than the first episode. After 40 years, we get to see a disintegration. So that's a good call. Good job, Paul. We see what Jawas love to eat, what snacks Yoda species eat. I want to leave voting room for the appearance of Gina. So leaving 2 points there in case her episodes are better. I feel she will be awesome in the series. So thank you for that, Paul. Appreciate that. All right, guys. Now, he did mention a couple of things that were Easter eggy, so why don't we get into our list of Easter eggs? And what we do is basically just pass the hot potato around the room and each take a turn throwing off an Easter egg or a reference, that counts too, that we saw in this episode. So, Jen Marie, did anything stand out to you, Easter eggy, or something that was maybe a reference to some old Star Wars stuff?
Yes, so when the Mando is kind of trying to converse with the Jawas when they're doing their trade, the Jawas tell him his Jawese is a bit sloppy, and they mention it sounding like Wookiee,
Yes.
which I thought was really cool. So I like that one a lot.
Nice. Good call. I did laugh at that part. Anytime you mention a Wookiee, I'm cool with that. So, Lacey, what do you got?
So I don't necessarily have an Easter egg, but just like kind of a reference that I noticed that's been used a couple times in Star Wars, and also Indiana Jones. And it's the part where he's hanging off the side of the vehicle and almost gets smashed by the cliff. And John would be so proud that I remembered this from Indiana Jones.
Very proud.
It's also in Solo, though, because Chewie...
that's what I was going to say.
Yes.
I was like, I didn't think of Indiana Jones. I thought of Chewie and Solo.
Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade with the tank.
And Han's face, like...
Yeah. And they definitely did it
sorry, Harrison's face.
Harrison's face.
Not Han Solo.
Right.
Indiana Jones.
One and the same, I guess. But then it's funny, in Solo they did that as a nod to Indiana Jones, and then now they did it to a nod to that, So
I thought of Indiana Jones first, not
I'm very
Solo.
proud of you because you.
Thank you so much.
Jen Marie, you've seen the Indiana Jones movies, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Lacey just watched them for the first time like a month ago.
Whoa! That is crazy!
I know, right?
Eesh.
I think I know more people who haven't seen Star Wars than Indiana Jones.
It's true.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's a TRB Easter egg for you right there. James, did you have anything that popped out at you, reference or Easter egg?
Well, one of the things I noticed is watching this episode is that it was not Easter egg heavy. You know?
Yeah.
Just
No,
in general, I think this episode was like, oh, his ship was destroyed. He goes and talks to the Jawas and gets the parts, and then he goes and fixes the ship, and that was the whole episode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's little things to talk about, like you mentioned the no disintegrations. I wrote down that's kind of a connection, but honestly, I don't really know that there's more than that. Do you guys have other things? I was really bare on this episode.
I had a few. Obviously, disintegrations was one, because Darth Vader telling Boba Fett no disintegrations, and you kind of always wondered, like, what does that look like? And apparently it looks like your clothes stick around, but you disappear like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
At least they didn't explode.
Right, yeah.
In the sense of, like, goo.
Yes, like the egg.
The other thing that stood out to me was the, at the end when he offers him to join the crew, it reminded me, obviously, of Han and Rey, where he's like, I'm thinking of bringing on some crew.
Yep, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, nah, I'm good.
One thing, the Jawa paralyzing blast, they said the same like one word shout out that they did when they blasted R2 and paralyzed him. Utini was in there.
Yes,
So,
I was
pumped
gonna
when they
say.
said that.
Now that you say that, I heard that.
and
They had to do that. They couldn't not.
Yeah.
you have to. Yeah, 'cause the Phantom Menace, they did it too during the pod race.
Yeah.
One thing I saw an R5 droid, like R5D4 in the back with the Jawas, but I doubt it was that same droid. And then one other thing that no one will probably get, which I'll get made fun of. When I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of Nick at Night, and they had like Laugh-In on, if you guys know what that show is. And they would do this thing where they would be behind this wall, and these little
And they'd
windows
open
would
the
up,
doors.
and they'd stick
Yeah.
their head out. That's what the Jawas reminded me of.
Wasn't Goldie Hawn on that?
Yes, she was. Richard Nixon. It was a wild show.
So there is one thing that I thought of, which actually I thought James would think the same thing because he's brought this up before on the show, is the lizards at the beginning look like the dinosaur from Land Before Time.
Oh, like Littlefoot?
No, the ones that are like ducky or something, like the platypusy looking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that those might be a creature that, was in the Clone Wars or something, but I was like, I just don't know. Who knows? It might be new. It might be an Easter egg.
Sure.
Right.
They
Anyone else?
reminded me of those compies from one of the Jurassic Park films.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know
They're
what
like
you're
really
talking
tiny and they eat that guy alive.
about. Yes, that's right.
Those gave me nightmares for 2 years.
Yeah. Well, one thing we have to be thankful for is that the Star Wars movies haven't gotten as bad as the Jurassic Park movies, I guess. But
James would
Yeah.
disagree.
John just hates Jurassic Park.
we almost had Colin Trevorrow making episode 9, so we dodged that bullet.
He made one movie, and it's in the top 5 biggest box office of all time, John.
What, Book
And then
of
he
Henry?
made Book of Henry.
All right, this is a Mando show, though,
Did
guys.
you see Book of Henry, John?
No,
Then shut up!
I saw the Broadway play. All right. Anyone else have any others? Jen Marie, anything else stood out to you? A reference or an Easter egg?
No, that was all I had, actually.
Yeah. You
Oh,
guys-
the other thing I noticed was that the first like 5 to 10 minutes, they don't really talk, and it reminded me of Wall-E, because Wall-E, like the first 45 minutes, there's like no talking in that movie.
Oh.
And it really bothered people. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking, like, is anybody going to be bothered that there's no talking for like the first 10 minutes of the show?
That's a fair point. He does spend a lot of time not talking and doing much at all. So
It's just them walking. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings, you know?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So, I mean, that's fair. This episode really wasn't chock full of these types of things. I'm sure there'll be more as we move forward and there's more
Sure.
interactions and more city-type situations. But we did have one that we all missed that I saw on Twitter, and that was Doug Brooks at Desert Vol, who tweeted #MandoFando, and that's how we do that. And he said, I love that Jon Favreau basically recreated a level from Super Star Wars for this episode, the video game, I guess Super Nintendo. And it was Luke... You chase down a Jawa sandcrawler and you have to crawl up the side of it.
Oh, yeah. Someone else
Yeah.
pointed that out. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the type of thing I would never
I would have never
notice.
gotten that.
Yeah.
No.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it makes me want to play those old video games, though. All right, guys, so now let's hop into just a general discussion here. Spoiler breakdown. Obviously, if you're watching this, you know that you watched The Mandalorian. We don't need to hold your hand through this process. There's even people just throwing these things out in public online and stuff.
It's
which is
bad.
crazy. Yeah.
They're just,
insane.
it's like after one day, people were like, whatever.
Yeah, Jen Marie, I've seen you tweet against this a lot.
Yes.
Just like be careful stuff. So what's your advice? Like spoiler tags? What's your process to spoiler stuff on Twitter?
I think for everything, first of all, you should never be doing it the day after. That's nobody,
Right.
You don't know. Everybody has different schedules. But I kind of said that I would be talking full on spoilers on my blog posts. But as far as like all my social media platforms, I would be staying away from spoilers. If I am going to mention something, I will use a hashtag. Never posting photos or anything like that. Especially with this one because there's so many people who can't watch it yet. I'm
That's
just
it.
trying to make it fair for everybody. So
Yeah, I mean that's the way to go, and I commend you for that because, with articles we have to do on Star Wars Newsnet, sometimes we'll it's tough because you don't want to sound like you're clickbait, but you kind of have to make it that way because you don't want to put the reveal in the headline, and it's just such a tightrope walk. But
Yeah.
all right. So first, before we get into the discussion part, what we call quick shot here, your favorite shot of the episode. So whether that's a single frame or a few seconds. So I'll start this one with James. Did you have one shot that sticks out in your head that you carried with you after seeing it?
Not one shot, but probably like 10 shots. And that was all of the Jawa shots as they hit the Mandalorian and he fell off the top of the sandcrawler.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, that is good. You see like the blue just blast out of their little trumpets, whatever you call those things.
I think that whole scenario played out very well with him climbing up the side and you feeling like, okay, I can actually see his struggle of like being hit in the head. Yeah. And then he, they go through a couple different levels of him almost falling, but then recovering and stuff. And then when he finally gets up to the top, it's totally like comedic timing the way they planned it out. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, he finally made it. And then it's just like, well, he's not getting out of this.
That's a good point. It did feel a little comedy-esque, like Wile E. Coyote type of thing.
I loved that they were throwing trash at him. Like as he's...
I know.
They were just like, get rid of him.
I think you see one of them throw like just a piece of sheet metal like off, and it's not even goes anywhere near him. Like it just goes off the side and like flies away.
Like a hardcore wrestling
I do
match.
like though that at least one of those pieces hit him. It made it more real because I was like, "There's no way."
And he like growls too. He's like, "Ugh!" Like,
yeah, that was funny.
Okay, Jen Marie, did you have one shot that stuck out in your head?
I remember a shot, I think it was one of the mini scenes where it shows the Mandalorian and Tiny kind of just walking, and it was a wide shot, and I think the sun was setting, and it was just so beautiful. And I think it was near the beginning, but I was just like, wow, it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
This show is, when I'm watching it, I feel like I'm watching a Star Wars film.
That's a good point.
It's crazy.
That's the type of shot that you can see like getting framed and putting on the wall or something.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Or even like a desktop background on your PC or whatever. Without a doubt. Yeah. Lacey, what do you got?
So my favorite part of this episode was when he goes to see Ugnulty and they're chatting about how his ship is in, ruins. And then little Tiny's in the background and he's like, spit that out. And he's like eating it. Because it's such like a funny, like stereotypical, like little kid. Like I'm thinking of like Monsters Inc. Like, no, don't do that. And they just look at the person and do it.
Yep.
They're like, yeah, I'm doing this. And then he just kind of smiles and I'm like, oh my God, I love this creature.
That really makes me wonder about the anatomy of that species though.
Like the feet just slide right.
Right. Yeah.
The only way that's physically possible is if he's like breaking it down as it's going in, like a crazy acidic,
like a
process.
Snake or something. Because even I was thinking that creature, whatever it is wasn't
almost the same size as.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was so shocked by that.
That's true.
It just made me laugh how he was like, spit that out, and it eats it, and then he looks at Ugnaught and he's just like.
And he belches, right?
Yeah. I think he laughs.
Oh, he does?
He does like a little kid laugh. There's a couple times in the show that there's like a very low, like little kid. It's not like, it sounds very generic actually. Like they recorded a kid and then threw it into this creature.
Sure.
Like it sounds like a little kid.
You sure it wasn't Bill Hader?
I mean, I wouldn't. Maybe.
I think so. My favorite shot is definitely with our little boy Tiny here, and it was just when they showed his hand using the Force.
Oh yeah, his little
the little bassinet.
That was adorable.
That side shot, and you just see the hand, and that's them saying like he's doing work right now. But it's not an X-wing; it's a violent beast.
That's like 17,000 times his size.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and this brings me to where I want to start our kind of spoiler conversation here, and to why I gave this a what did I give this score?
You gave it a
You give it 7.5.
7.5. Because I feel like to this point, he has stolen the spotlight from The Mandalorian. The show's called The Mandalorian, but it should be called Tiny because this guy's been... everyone's... all they're talking about is this little creature. So that's my concern right now. How are you guys feeling about that? Jen Marie, I'll start with you. I know we have... we're only a quarter way through the season, but do you feel kind of like Spotlight's been stolen a bit?
I do. And I also felt like overall nothing happened in this episode besides the fact that we saw the Mando and Tiny kind of further develop their relationship and obviously that like big Force moment. So I was really torn about my rating because I loved it so much because of Tiny and that that relationship aspect of it. But when you really think about it, nothing happened.
Yeah.
To me, I just was like, oh wow, like a lot of this stuff was just like, it was just fun to watch. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that the relationship aspect of it is going to play a bigger part in maybe future episodes, but overall, I didn't feel like a lot happened.
I'm with you on this, actually. This is, I think, why people are going to say they love the TV world of Star Wars, because if The Mandalorian, whatever the arc is, was a 2-hour movie, none of this happens. You know what I mean? They'd figure out a different way to show you the Force thing, but like all the stuff with the Jawas, all the stuff with the ship, all the stuff with going back and forth between Nolte's, hut or whatever, they just wouldn't do any of that. And so I think when we get to the season finale and there's payoff there, the payoff is going to be like, we spent all these episodes, all this time with this character. So maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say where story lacks, but like what they're building up to will have just as great of a I'm glad I watched that whole thing as a 2-hour movie where everything is just like beat after beat after beat after beat after beat, and it all moves really quickly. This has that time to burn, the clock out a little bit, and with episodes like this where we would just kind of slowly watch him, and when he finally gets to that place, it feels a little more earned because we were there with him when he had to rebuild his ship.
Yeah,
and that's not something you see in a movie.
Right.
I see what you mean with that. Like the Jawas, for example, in the films we barely see them. We love them so much we barely see them. In this episode, we got to see them a lot, which I loved. But I think because it's a TV show, like you're saying, we get to see a little bit more of that extra stuff that makes us Star Wars fans happy, even though it might not really matter. It's fun.
This episode probably brought us more Jawas than we've ever had in canon.
Without question.
Yeah.
So why even call it The Mandalorian? Lacey, let's just recall this show Tiny and the Jawas. What do you think? What's going on? What's going on right now? Too much Tiny? What's the deal?
So I'm one of the people that love Tiny, so I'm going to be like, I'm okay with it. Yeah. But at the same time, I get what you're saying because it isn't that. It's The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But I think this episode, similar to what Jen Marie was saying, is that it feels like what we call a filler episode where it's not bad, but if you missed this one and picked up at 3, you wouldn't miss anything. Because you already know that he has this baby creature. You already know that he's going back to wherever he's going. So if you missed this episode, which by the way is super short, entirely, you wouldn't feel like you missed anything. This seemed like a very fan servicey episode for Star Wars fans that want these fun, weird moments like Jawa's eating a gigantic, hairy Cadbury egg.
That part I did find interesting because, you think like you have to go on this quest and bring us this thing. And when you do, we'll unlock this and it'll be... So they grab the egg and they're like, oh... And then
it's very video game.
Then they're just like, whack! And they just start eating it.
I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to kill the baby.
Yeah, right.
I was so scared.
Yeah, so it was just yolk.
And they were very minion-y to me. Like, I had a different...
Oh my gosh, yes!
Yes, I had a different idea of Jawas before this, and then after seeing them, it was very Minions. And I know that they came before Minions, but that's the vibe I got from them. like
That's fair.
mischievous, like little guys, minions.
Yeah. I kind of felt, I felt like they proved what C-3PO said, which is they're disgusting little creatures. Like them eating that giant Cadbury egg was so disgusting. The mouth noises, just everything. They're just so rude. They're just like, blah, 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 blah.
How about how they were like, okay, we'll give you the best parts back and we'll keep the rest. And he's like, no, you're not doing that. Like, I felt that when he said that. I was like, what?
Yeah. James, what were we going to say?
I was going to say that I actually like just about everything that they did with the Jawas, except for the fact that it seems like now I have more questions as to like how they exist and things. Like, I guess my thing is like, we now have discovered that this is not Tatooine,
Right.
which means like, how did these guys get here and also have the same sandcrawler, you know?
Yeah. Unless
Does
they
it fly
built
in
it.
space?
Maybe it does. Maybe they're pulling like a resistance thing where like you think it's like it's only here, but it actually could
so
like
weird.
lift off into space and go to a different.
Would.
I mean, it kind
Like
of
a
makes
block
sense. Like
of
if,
cheese.
Yeah, just
like if
like a block
Jawas
of
had a
cheese in
home,
space.
you would assume it was this place, and if they have a home, it's
go back to your
you know
home,
what I mean?
Jawa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That'd be funny for like a second, and then I'd be like, oh, I don't know. But
Also, did they have red eyes instead of yellow eyes?
They
it
did.
looked, yeah, it looked like it. I don't know if that's just one of those things like let's sell different action figures of Jawas and we'll just
Maybe
call
it's a
them,
different species of
Yeah.
Jawa.
or maybe on this planet you need like your eyes adjust differently because there's only one sun. Like
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it has something to do with like like even humans, like depending on where they are near the equator, like we look differently. So I mean, I
or
can understand.
George Lucas like had a clause where if you show yellow-eyed Jawas, he gets paid like $5 every time they're on screen or something.
Probably.
Droid.
Yeah, he takes it to Starbucks and places his order. All right, so yeah, the other thing, like I was looking at my notes, and James, I'm starting to lean. I want to talk about the music briefly. I'm teetering back your way a little bit because when I'm hearing the main theme again, it's just constantly like Creed, Rocky. Like the Rocky fights. If you ever watch a Rocky movie, they show you the first round. And then rounds 2 through the second to last round, they play a song, and it's this like pretty much the main theme from Mandalorian, and they're showing like the montage of the fight, and I can't separate that from my brain. I feel like other people kind of felt that too. So, and he did the music for Creed too. So, Jen Marie, I mean, last
Creed
week,
1. That was a bad joke.
you're a funny guy. Last week the three of us talked about this. So, what's your take on the music? Obviously, it's not John Williams. It's a different style. This guy Ludwig, who did like Black Panther and that sort of thing. Do you like the music from Mandalorian? What's your vibe on it?
I do not like it.
Okay.
Actually, it's very distracting for me. I have to really focus because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit to me, and sometimes I'm not even sure if it's a score. It's more like just very odd noises. When I did my rewatch of Chapter 1, I did a little bit better, but like the first half of it was really difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't feel like Star Wars to me, which I don't know.
He said in a recent interview that if he was going to... he said in a recent interview that if he was going to try to follow in George's footsteps, the thing he would try to do is just totally not that.
John Williams, you mean?
Oh, yes, sorry. I say George Lucas.
Okay.
I meant John Williams, yeah.
No, yeah, and they said, like Jon Favreau said, I wanted someone who's going to take a risk and kind of give this show its own identity, and you can't say they didn't do that. It's just a matter of if you like it, and I feel like people are kind of like half and half. Some people are over the moon and listening to it constantly on Spotify, and some people are saying things like, this sounds too much like a Rocky fight. Lacey, have you changed your mind? You were kind of like in between on this, right, last week?
Yeah, no, I don't mind it. It's very obvious that there are certain beats that when they're happening, you know what's going on. Like when bad things are going to happen to him and stuff like that, which it's supposed to do. But then I saw on Twitter that I don't think he did all the music because Matthew Wood was saying how he helped do the soundtrack too. So I think that's where you're getting the random noises
Oh.
and sounds. Like someone had tweeted that hint. I can't remember. I feel terrible, but someone had said that they and Matthew Wood, who did Kylo Ren's voice, he does all the different droid sounds and stuff like that. Like he helped with this soundtrack. So that might be part of the noise stuff that people are hearing outside of the main theme of The Mandalorian. The only part that I really, really enjoy is the part that when something momentous happens, like Tiny using the Force to raise that rhino, which, by the way, is a mom protecting her egg, so that's terrible, but such is life in Star Wars that they kill it.
The dark side.
Yeah. So, yeah, the music's fine. It hasn't grown on me in the way that, like, I'm listening to Rey's theme every day, but I think it fits. I think there's a lot of montages. Like, it's a lot of montagey stuff, like them fixing the ship, him riding the blurg. Like, let's go an episode without a montage.
Which is the most Rocky thing ever.
Yeah, and they even do at one point the crossfade from them fixing the ship into Tiny's face and then back to that. I was like, this is very old school that they're showing this like crisscrossy montage. Yeah,
They're like,
it was very old school.
They're making Tiny like again, this is not Yoda. Like Burgess Meredith, like the old boxing coach, like watching, just like, all right, yeah.
Well,
fix it,
no,
fix
not
it.
even that. He was asleep still, so they were crossfading to show you over the course of the night or whatever while they're fixing the ship
fade in
that he's still sleeping.
Right.
But they don't go a full fade to Tiny. They do a half fade, so his face is over them fixing it.
I know what you're saying now.
That is a very old school film technique,
Yeah.
and I remember seeing it being like, this makes no sense because they've not done this at all in the other episode. Or in Star Wars in general, they don't really do that kind of like half look. They either cut to one person or the other. But maybe that was their way of doing like a retro film look.
Yeah. A lot of my notes have to do with this guy. James, what do you got here?
So the one thing that is that the one problem I had with the solo soundtrack is that John Williams wrote that theme, and I felt like they used it too much throughout the whole thing. You kept going back to that and it's supposed to be the thing that kind of carries you through the whole movie, but sometimes when they use themes too much, it gets old. And already after 2 episodes, I think people are starting to get tired of the do 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 do.
Right.
Do 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 do.
Yeah.
You know, that little thing. And the other one that I was going to point out is the Rocky theme that goes is the same like note and pattern. Yeah. Even when you play them like side by side, it's like, okay, so it starts off with the same kind of idea, and I think that's where people are pulling that from.
Yeah.
That being said, I actually came into this episode with the mindset of saying, I do actually think I'm starting to process it a little bit better, and I think my feelings on the music have gone up since the first episode.
Oh, like
yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to the soundtrack because we'd talked about how they come out, and I kind of don't know why I'm doing it because I didn't like it, but I was like, well, we're just absorbing Mandalorian stuff, so I'll do it. And there's the whole song that plays out when he's like actually shooting the Jawas has a lot of brass and string to it, and I was like, okay, there's actually like a melody in there and stuff, and I was like, okay, I think I'm starting to get hopeful. Like, I feel that the music is capable, and by the time we get to the end of the season and we really get to the real heavy moments of the show, they're gonna do it right.
I thought of something similar to that, James. Like, if you have you guys seen the movie Batman Begins?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you know how like when he's like in the mountains where like Ra's al Ghul is, and you hear like hints of the Batman theme, but it like always stops and it never gets there, and then when he finally gets to the Batcave, it just explodes and he's like the full Batman theme. Maybe they're trying to, like you say, James, they're crescendoing and they're trying to build to something where it's going to be all kind of come together and be a bigger piece or composition during a big action sequence or the peak of the season. I mean, who knows? So I mean, we're only like 50 minutes into this guy, so I guess we have to give him kind of the benefit of the doubt. But I agree with what everyone's saying here. It is way different, and it may be a total misfire by the end of the season, but we'll find out. But the last thing, like to round it back out, like I was looking at all my show notes, like 90% of what I jotted down have to do with the being tiny, like and stuff. So obviously he's going to be this, MacGuffin, those Trandoshan's that he fought in that Land of the Lost feeling scene. They had a tracker, so they were sent by somebody to find him. So all these, and we haven't seen Giancarlo Esposito yet in the show. We haven't seen the assassin Fennec Shand. We haven't seen Cara Dune, obviously. There's a lot more people who are going to be entering this deal. Is everyone going after him? That's my vibe. But where are you guys at with that? Are you feeling that way, Jen Marie? Do you think this is kind of like he's the MacGuffin?
I kind of do, because, I mean, in the first episode, we know that IG-11 and the Mandalorian were given different directives as far as what to do with the bounty when they found it.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, this is very interesting. I think Tiny's going to be much more involved, because now we know that some people are directed to destroy him. Others are directed to keep him alive.
Right.
And so there is, I'm wondering if there's even something more to him than being force sensitive.
Could be.
Is this like a Captain Marvel thing where like we're gonna be flipped at the end and we're gonna realize that the bounty hunter guild is the bad people? John, you've alluded to this.
Oh.
And the Trandoshans are actually like
protectors
trying to save him and protect him.
It could very well be like the whole thing in the prequels. The Separatists wound up being the good guys because they were the rebellion against what wound up being the Empire. That's a good idea. That's a good call, James. Hang on to that one. Make sure you save this clip so that we can bring it back later and brag about it. But someone else tweeted. You guys saw this, right? Someone tweeted that Captain or Dr. Persing had a patch that looked like Kaminoan, like the cloning thing. Have you guys seen that? You guys saw that?
Yeah.
Kaminoan.
Kaminoan? Kaminoan?
Kaminoan.
Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
Not for me, babe.
Kaminoan?
Long neck planet.
I've never heard Kaminoan.
Bright and rainy.
Yeah.
Slippery.
Do you think this is could he be a clone, or could they be wanting to get him to clone him? Where are we at with that?
I think that they want to clone him. That's what it sounds like to me.
He's not a clone of like Yoda or anything?
How would they have cloned Yoda?
Oh, I know.
I think if he was a clone, I feel like they could have been like, well, we lost the asset, but we could do it again.
The only reason why
Right.
is people, Yoda went and got the clones from Kamino and brought them to Geonosis. So they could have grabbed the sample from him back then. But they're
Plucked a hair.
But where I'm
Taking his hairbrush.
Where I'm yeah, right. Yoda's like, all right. Where I'm off on that is the dates, because if he's 50 years old, he is born 9 years before the Phantom Menace. So that kind of negates that, but he could have visited before. So I don't know. I hope he's not a clone of Yoda. That's all I'm saying.
The problem is we don't, as we all know, we don't know anything about Yoda except that it's Yoda and
Right.
he's a Jedi Master.
Right.
Like, we don't know anything about his species, where he came from, basically everything. So I don't think we can make that call right now, but I
Right.
don't think that he's a clone. I think they want to clone him.
Yeah, I'm so.
Yeah, I hope that he's not a clone.
Yeah, me too.
I'm
But
also wondering,
they don't mind if he's dead.
Right.
That's true.
That's why I'm so confused. Like, what are the different
Yeah.
reasons? Also, like,
Sounds
is
like
it
good
safe
writing.
to assume that, because now we know of Yoda, Yaddle, and Tiny, are all these species force sensitive?
Yeah. I mean,
Probably.
that-
You know who's not force sensitive? The Mando, who also is not as good as I first thought. Like, the first scene you see him, he's kicking butt like crazy.
Right.
Like, he's taking names.
Right.
And then the end of the last episode and this episode, it's like just like pile on Mando. Like, he is not as...
Yeah.
He almost dies like 6 times.
Mando's the guy at the bar at the end of the night who beats up all the guys who are wasted. Like, he beat up all those drunks in that bar in the first scene. And then after that, he's gotten his tail kicked. You're right. So
He totally has. And
Yeah.
yet his armor got destroyed 2 times. And then he rolls up to the Jawas with like perfectly somewhat decent armor. And I'm like, okay, but wait, he just got chest like this is Sparta kicked by the Rhino, and yet he's perfectly fine. But how cute was it when Tiny tried to force heal him and he kept picking him up, put him back in the cradle, he'd get back out, he picked him back up, put him back in the cradle.
yeah,
That was my favorite scene.
that was cute.
It was so adorable. I mean, that's what kids do.
They want to help you.
They're like, no, go back. And then they come and try it again. It was so cute.
So I wrote that down as something that I feel like if we didn't get to it, we need to talk about that, because we're all assuming what we saw here. He was trying to fix the wound ET style, which is, as far as I've been thinking about it all day, I can't think of any other time that's like a thing in Star Wars. Yeah. So there is something very specific about this person or creature's force abilities. Maybe that is the tie to why they're trying to get to him, because he has this ability that nobody else has. And I just thought they're opening up the force yet again to another new possibility of things that can happen when you use the force.
Yeah.
Like healing the sick, healing the wounded.
Yeah. I'm just going to say it. Somebody gets thrown down a shaft in the Death Star. If people can be healed using the force,
heal yourself.
I'm just, that was the first thing I thought of. Was like, this kind of goes into that whole, like, it's what?
The plot. You ever see the movie The Wolverine, where he's in Japan?
Oh, yeah.
They want to take,
because he can't die.
Yeah, they want to take his powers and
yeah.
Are we? Is J.J. Abrams using the plot of the Wolverine in episode 9?
It's kind of Deadpool too, because he can re-heal again.
I mean,
slower,
James,
but
that's another potential idea. Stock up these clips. Let's do that.
Called it.
All right. So, any last thoughts on this episode in particular before we try to take our shots and guess what may happen in what's hopefully a non-filler episode next week?
IG-11 is dead. Everyone was like, is he really dead? He could be rewired. I don't know, but he got left behind and he's dead.
He did not take him with him. That's a good point. Yep.
I'm still not 100% certain on that one, Lacey.
I
know what they're doing. Back. I'm just saying, I think the marketing, though, that's the big thing. But then if we're doing that, then
could it be 12,
Nolte's out of the show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I don't know if I think I don't even know how you pronounce the real name. Queel? Was that it? Quill?
Ugnolte.
Ugnolte is
Peter Queel.
Peter Queel. So Jenry, you think IG-11's toast?
No.
Oh, okay. So what do you think's going on?
I think he's coming back.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he's a droid. He just shot him.
So do you think
droids get shot and repaired all the time?
So do you think the person who sent him to get the bounty came and got him and put him back together like Toy Story style?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't worked it out that far. But
Obi-Wan left Anakin.
Back. Yeah.
Somebody came and got him.
Yeah, true.
He probably turned back on and was like, I have failed self-destruct mode.
Right. Yeah, right.
I do want to point out, though, that I really like the fact that the Mando and Kuiil are not aware of the Force.
Right.
I think it's going to make the Mandalorian and Tiny's journey more unique.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I mean, because a lot of characters in Star Wars, I feel like, know about the Force. They've heard of it, at least. So I think it's very interesting that they have no idea what happened.
Yeah,
right.
That's a good point, because even Han Solo in A New Hope had heard of it, and he thought it was a bunch of BS.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's funny, because he, worried about him at the end there, and they even played a lullaby version of the main theme, and he was shaking the bassinet are you alive, as he's piloting.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like he's a dad,
and then he's like,
yeah, and then he popped up and he's like, oh god.
Can we get a Funko Pop of Tiny?
Yeah. You know what's happening.
Yeah, that's gonna sell.
Literally no way.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
They're gonna do
plushies
full
and stuffed
size.
animals.
They'll do the full size pop.
I bet
so cute.
That'll be in stores on Black Friday. I guarantee it.
Probably.
Could be.
They want to sell those things. Yeah. All right. So let's look ahead to chapter 3.
Wait, let me run through.
Oh boy.
Because I see all these little things and I'm like, I just feel like I'd stress out if I didn't mention them.
Okay.
The whole the ship got all the parts taken and you have to slowly rebuild it over time and you have to go through all these quests. That's kind of the whole plot behind the Black Spire Outpost book.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't consider that an Easter egg, but I did write that down. I was like, this makes me feel like I'm watching the Black Spire Outpost novel. Nice. I was bugged when Ugnulty said, what was it? I said it in the chat. It's like, I am your servant because you're my guest. And he's like, cool, you want to come with me? And he's like, no, I'm nobody's servant. I was like, what is that? What?
Right.
What kind of writing is that? I was confused. What else did I put here? Oh, that he was like giving up. He's like, all right, I'm dead. This thing's gonna hit me, and I'm dead. That was
the
like
knife was like shaking. He was like, this is it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to bow and I'm just going to take this. This is my last ditch effort. And I was like, he already gave up. That kind of goes to Lacey's point. And then when he finally gets up, he like just one in the neck real quick. And that whole thing just fell over. I was like,
yeah, this little knife took like a big thing.
I was like, you could stick this pen in my neck and it wouldn't kill me that quickly.
Yeah, you know what? That's like one of those like old fables where like one little thing can take down the giant beast sort of things. I'm fine.
Yeah, I was kind of okay with it.
Imagine James was like, this one pen.
Yeah,
I loved it. Yeah,
I'll do the rest of the show.
And then I actually do that. Yeah. Nobody mentioned this one too, and I loved the scene when they were like, "You're well, you kind of mentioned it, Jen, like the your Jawies or whatever is poor. You're like a Wookiee," and he's like, "Boom!" and he hits him with the flamethrower.
Yeah,
we didn't mention the flamethrower, but it was like a pure on laugh out loud moment, massively unexpected.
He's like, what do you think about this?
I got a lot of Han Solo vibes during
that was a
whole
Han
scene.
Solo.
Yeah. And I love the moving pod. That's the last thing I got. I love the way they've created that thing that follows him.
Right.
Even when he's on the sandcrawler, it's like speeding up and it slows down when he slows down.
Yeah.
So just a couple things. I was like, these aren't Easter eggs. These aren't my favorite moments, but I feel like I just want to talk about them.
Well,
there was one line though that James, I'm surprised you didn't mention, and it's when he was supposed to put his blasters down, and he was just like, "Well, Mandalorians, it's part of our religion. Weapons are part of our religion."
Yep.
Yeah.
I found that an interesting line.
It is interesting. It didn't like super stick with me. I was like, yeah, that's true, but he's got to negotiate. He's got to make compromises here. So.
Sure.
Well, at least he knows now if he needs, like, if he's sick and tired of little Tiny, just have him use the Force and he'll be knocked out for like 16 hours. That's how you get him to take a nap. All right, now James, de-stressed. We can move on to
de-stressed.
All right. So chapter 3. One prediction each, maybe something like that. Jen Marie, where do you think we're going with chapter 3?
Ooh, well, I hope we see Cara Dune. To be honest.
Yep.
I don't want it to be one of those things where she has a much smaller role than what she's been marketed for.
Right.
And I'll also say I think Tiny and the Mandalorian are going to be inseparable. I just have this feeling.
Okay. Nice. I dig that. James, what's going on in chapter 3? You're a big prediction guy tonight, so this is a big moment.
No. You know the scene in the trailer where it shows Grief and then like 2 or 3 other people and they all like turn because the ship is landing?
Yeah.
I think that's episode 3. I think it's him returning. That's all I got is I think this is going to be him going back to where he was and them kind of uncovering who is it that really wants this thing and what are they going to be using it for. That's my guess.
All right. Very good. Lacey?
Yeah, I agree. I think Cara Dune's going to show up. I think he's going to return back to where he started, but I don't think he's turning Tiny in. I think he's going to start investigating who put this out there that they wanted this and why. And I think he's going to keep like running into people that are looking for it.
Yeah, I think that's possible too. I have no like set thing in my mind. I do think there's going to be kind of a let's go back to civilization because we need a little more action than kind of just walking through the desert kind of thing.
Right.
The Grief Karga thing makes sense to me. I agree, Jen Marie. Cara Dune would be nice to see because everyone's so hyped about it at this point.
Right now, she's WAARA Dune.
Where is Dune?
Oh my gosh.
So cheesy. And then Giancarlo Esposito. I think maybe we'll see him next episode. I think there's going to be some hostility going on for that we're kind of missing aside from that beast in the second episode. So I think we're going to have a little more action in episode 3. Stakes are going to be raised a little bit more. So I think if you enter those Imperial mercenary type guys, because I don't know how much more of the Werner Herzog we're going to see. I don't know if this was a situation where he just did his like cameo and that was it or what. But I am the most interested in this Dr. Persing guy because I'm kind of like you guys know, James and Lacey, I'm like cloned out. Like I don't want Star Wars to be the clone franchise. Like we did the Clone Wars and the Attack of the Clones, and we've introduced, the reference to cloning in The Force Awakens. Like I kind of want to step away from that. So it makes me a little nervous. And then it also makes like deaths a little trivial if you're able to clone and that sort of thing. So I'm very interested to see what they do with that from a standpoint of concern. But we will see where we go, and hopefully we have better ratings and stuff like that for it going forward. But that kind of takes us towards the end of the show here. James and Lacey, as always, I want to thank you guys. But more importantly, Jen Marie, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Mando Fan Show.
Well, thank you. I had a blast.
Now, your blog is called Anakin and His Angel, and that's been going for 19 years?
Yeah, next Thursday will be 19 years.
Holy cow. So you started that thing when you were 4. That's insane.
I think I was 14. It was not long after The Phantom Menace.
That's
in the theaters,
so there's 5 billion blogs, 500,000 podcasts, and you were probably one of the early ones. So that's so cool. Where can people? What's the URL? Where can people find that besides like a Google search, of course?
Yeah, it's AnakinandHisAngel.com.
Perfect. And social, is Twitter the best spot for you?
Twitter, I'm across the stars because Anakin and His Angel is too long, unfortunately. But all my other social platforms, it's Anakin and His Angel.
Okay, like Instagram and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Very good. James, how about you?
Twitter and Instagram at Myra Trunks.
Yes. Lacey?
Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran.
All right, you guys can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey and writing and editing at StarWarsNewsNet.com. Make sure you are going to Star Wars Newsnet because in addition to our show, we do written reviews that include giveaway contests for each review for an episode, a chapter of The Mandalorian. In the comments, you can leave a comment and enter to win a cool Mandalorian-based prize. So go to StarWarsNewsNet.com. Also, I want to thank our patrons because we wouldn't be doing this show if it wasn't for the Resistance Broadcast patrons. So thank you all so much. If you're interested in supporting the Resistance Broadcast, head to Patreon.com/Resistance Broadcast. Tiers start at $2 a month to go check out the page. I do want to thank our generals, CARMELO, Brian Shalito, Andrew Staley, Neil Lowry, Jeremy Myers, Neil Shaw, David Probus, John RISI, J.G. Karst, Seth Keim, and Val Trichkoff. Thank you so much, Generals, for your support. That's pretty much it. If you're not subscribed, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. It's Star Wars Newsnet and the Resistance Broadcast, and, of course, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Our crew will be back on Monday for the Resistance Broadcast and Thursday as well. But next Friday for Chapter 3 of the Mando Fan Show. Look at me. I can't even say my own show. The Mando Fan Show will be joined by Jonah Marie Macias of the Wiki Gunner blog and Geeky Bubble podcast. So we're very excited for her to join us next Friday to hopefully talk about an exciting episode of The Mandalorian. So thanks for watching, listening, being Mando Fandos with us here on The Mando Fan Show. We will see you next week. And as always, we will see you around here.